I always mix my greens. Apart from the cobalt turquoise light in my palette, I don't have a green in my palette. And I got my green mixers from an artist called Fletcher Watson. He's dead now, but he's a lovely watercolour artist, and I loved the way he mixed his greens. I'm going to take a bit of Prussian blue, and a bit of lemon yellow. Mix that. Mix quite a light green, and I'll squeeze my brush. If you watch that, I'll just squeeze the colours in. Okay. I'll mix 2 values of green. That I'll do a bit more yellow, and we'll call that light. Again, I'll squeeze. And then I'll mix a darker green, and for that I'll take Prussian blue, which I put in there. And raw umber. Bit more blue in the green, but remember I said I would explain about autumn. On this dark, I put a little bit more raw umber in there, just to give it that less than green feel. So, and again, I'm not too bothered. This wash about being neat. I'm not going to do the cypresses, I'll get them, just do them dark. A bit of the dark, a bit of a Prussian blue in that's too, it's not green enough. A little bit more Prussian blue, just a little bit of the dark in there. Forgotten the bank along here. A bit more of the yellow in that. Although it will be quite dark, so let's get the darker blue, darker green, sorry. Will be much more creamy. There'll be much more pigment, and the relationship between water and pigment will be more even. In that first wash there was lots of water. So if I say I'm going to start with the trees, I need some greens. I'll mix 2 greens again. I'll mix the yellow, quite creamy now, it's quite thick, that yellow. And I'll mix Prussian blue. That's too dark. Spend half my life trying to get my mixes right. More yellow. Okay, that'll do for my first yellow. For my first green, or my light green. Prussian blue. And raw umber for my darker green. Okay. Remember, it's getting towards autumn time, so we'll have things on the warm side. Okay, I'll go for a 6 brush first. I guess I'm not doing the cypresses yet. Is that a 6? Yeah, I think it is. So I'll get some of the green, and I'm holding my brush again as far away from the brush hair as I possibly can. That way I'm not going to be stiff and it's going to be able to move, and when I find myself down here I know I'm in trouble. So let's just, on this second wash, I'm putting on the greens, and you can see I'm putting them on in a almost a random way, but where they should be, but in a random way and not a continuous way. I get a bit of the dark and drop it and connect it with the bit that's there. Connect so that you get that mixing on the paper. And as I'm putting this darks on, in my mind I'm quite conscious that I know where my sun's coming from. So on this tree that I'm pointing at with the brush, the darkest part's going to be on the right. So let's do that, because the sun will be shining on the left hand side. Don't mind white bits getting left in there, that's alright, that's nice. Again, the darkest parts on the right. Another thing you can do, a thing I do, is the colours I've used to mix my greens, I might just pick them up at odd times. So for example, a little bit of burnt sienna, and just drop that in. Just pick it up off the paint and just drop it in. Didn't pick much up there. Let's get that going. Pick it up off the paint and just drop it in. Can you see? That's going to give us the autumn feel, those colours. Just drop it in. A little bit of the Prussian blue. Just drop it on top. Just to give us variety. Get the dark again. A lot of blue in that still. Get a bit more burnt sienna on that. Actually it was raw umber, wasn't it? But burnt sienna's fine. And I'm going to take care about the umbrellas. I've actually gone halfway down the brush handle there, so that shows you how much care I'm taking here, because I don't want to lose the umbrellas. I want them to pop out. Bit of dark on there above them, and maybe a bit of raw umber just dropped in. Maybe a bit of raw umber just at the top as well, so that they... And where it's very light, a little bit of... Get myself a little bit of the yellow lemon. It'll probably get corrupted by what was already on my brush, but just drop that in as well, just to give the light bits. My dark green, I initially mixed it with raw umber and Prussian blue, but quite often I use burnt sienna and I realise I've gone and got that. Probably an accident, but it's fine, it's absolutely fine. Let's get some darkness in this. Just leave some white bits there. Don't know what they are. They just add a little bit of interest. Again, connecting my colours as I work along. I want to keep that car happy. I won't get all of my foliage done in this second wash. I'll be revisiting with some even darker bits by the time I come to my third wash. put some dark, so let's get a little bit of Prussian blue there, a little bit of burnt sienna, a bit more burnt sienna, and get some dark bits. Just drop some dark into that right hand side of those trees. And towards the bottom. Trees generally get a little bit darker as you move to the bottom. Bit of dark green under the car. This tree here that we left a gap for. The darkness will run all over this, but let's just stick a little bit of the dark on that side of it. And then behind that, in front of the house and behind the wall, try and keep that post. Use my light green as we come along the edge of the road. Bit of dark green on it just to indicate perhaps where there might be some shadows, or just darker green. Quite dark here at the very front where that cluster of overgrown kind of trees and weeds, trees, they're not trees, are they? Grass and weeds is. And then it doesn't matter if you paint over those posts, because we're going to get them darker. One of the things about working light to dark is that even if we happen to go over something, the next thing we put it on is going to be darker, so it's going to pretty much still show. That's one thing about watercolour. It's different to oil. You can't really go dark to light. It doesn't work. Not without some jiggery pokery with acrylic or gouache or something like that. Which is fine. I'm not against that. Let's go over the other side, and remember the other side, remember the left hand side was more in shadow, so I'm going to add a bit of raw umber into that light green mix, and a little bit of Prussian blue just to make quite a dark green as the base for what we're doing. A bit of dark in there as well. This is really how I work my second wash. I'm just dropping paint into paint. Remember we talked about getting perhaps just a little bit of the neat colour just at the bottom there. Now that, the Prussian blue, is probably not an autumny look, so I'll get a bit of raw sienna on it to just give it a bit of warmth there at the bottom. It's not at the moment looking too different from the other side, but don't worry about that, because this is our second wash, which is just going to mark out and establish the drawing for us. Okay, bit of Prussian blue in here. That was probably more than I should have done, but that's my way. Bit more raw umber. to dark. Maybe just a bit of yellow just to drop into that, just to create a bit of variation on the bank there. Maybe, well, maybe a bit of yellow here, but I really want it to be quite dark, I think. That's very on the blue side of things, so let's get a little bit of burnt sienna again, drop it in. So you're dropping it in and you're letting the Bockingford paper and the watercolours work together. Bit more there. There's going to be some shadows there, and I resist the temptation to put them in yet. Okay, I'm going to drop my 6 brush. Okay, a little bit more light green for this side of here, and I'll finish with the greens then, and I'll think about now the buildings, the car, and the cypress trees as well. But if you look at my palette, I've got all my greens set up there, so I'm gonna clear some space. Just wet a kitchen towel and just clean off a little bit, a few of those. Go back to my 4, and I'm going to mix, for the right hand side of the buildings, a light kind of colour based on raw sienna, cobalt violet, it's a bit on the biscuity side, that. Let's get some more raw sienna in there. And over there, because that will end up being quite dark. A little bit more of the yellow in that one. Lighten that one off. I like doing it, but I need now a real dark. So I'm going to get Prussian blue. And burnt umber, which is a lovely brown. And I want it on the brown side. That's quite dark. And with that, using a number 4 brush, I'm going to start to have a go at the cypress trees that are there. Just suggest that they go down there a bit. Same on that side, just a little bit there. This one's still a bit wet around it, so I won't do it there yet, but that tree at the background, the back there, that's quite dark. And this palmy thing, I'll make that quite dark. Whilst I've got this dark colour, and I know it's still only the second wash, but it's pretty dry, I'll darken under in bits, darken under the umbrellas, darken under some of these. Again, add some darks. To the trees. My green there now is pretty much dry, so if it's still wet you won't get the darks kind of being able to maintain their piece of paper. They'll get swamped by what was already still wet there. Trees just a bit. I might have to stand up in a minute and have a look, see what's happening. You can get too close to a picture, like physically. I mean, you can be, and you can't see the wood for the trees. Refresh that dark a bit more. Prussian blue and burnt sienna. Let's get a lot more burnt sienna in that. Start to bring in some of the shadows there. These shadows will extend into the road, but not in green. And I'll hold my brush right on the end and just start to create that jumble of grass and whatever we have that's there.